Welcome to Criminal Records Introduction on Mastering for Vinyl. Back in the good old days, when records as we know them now first started, they were just mono. The cutting stylus moved from side to side across the record surface, making the groove of the music. When the idea of stereo came along, it was intended that the stylus would move up and down to create the left-hand channel, and from side to side to create the right. But, oh dear, nothing's that simple. The left-hand channel, the one where the stylus moves up and down, sounded awful. More distortion, less recorded level, and generally not as open or as dynamic. Obviously, it couldn't be left that one channel of the stereo image sounded awful and the other channel sounded okay. So a very, very clever compromise was thought up. A compromise, yes. Very, very clever, yes. But also very simple. It was decided to tweak the cutter head itself through 45 degrees, so that the stylus cut both channels sort of half side to side and half up and down. It's a compromise because neither channels sound as good as the mono side to side, but at least both channels sound the same. And so the second compromise, RIAA equalization. This reduces the distance between grooves and therefore lengthens the recorded time available, and reduces high frequency noise of the surface of the record, you know, the clicks and pops and bangs. The amount of distance you need between the grooves is all to do with the bass. With loud bass, the groove swings across the surface of the record a long way, so grooves have to be spaced further apart, or they'll crash into each other. The RIAA equalization reduces the amount of bass that's recorded, so the stylus swings around the surface of the record less, so the grooves can be packed closer together, so you get more recorded time on your record. As well as reducing recorded bass, RIAA seriously increases the amount of treble recorded. When we play back, that treble is taken away again, so most, if not all, of the surface noise also disappears. So, treble, the cutting engineer's nightmare. This is mainly S's and T's, you know, vocal sibilance, but can extend to maybe brass, strings and string synthesizers, stuff that's really energetic in the sort of 3 to 5 kilohertz department. There's several reasons for this, the first of which is that a lot of those instruments, brass, strings, synths, even cymbals, and screaming guitars come to that, and the S's and T's of sibilance, have a lot of energy in that bandwidth anyway. On top of that, by the time you've applied that hideously punishing RIAA curve, which is adding at the very top end an additional 20 dB to the signal, you've got an awful lot of energy to try and get onto plastic. Another reason is that of the cutter head and stylus mechanics itself. It is very possible that you waggle the stylus around so hard and fast that the back edge of the cutting stylus actually wipes out the front edge of what you've just recorded. When you play this back, the playback stylus just can't track that amount of movement quickly enough, and you end up with a very distorted sound that's breaking up on all these top end frequencies. Unfortunately, in a way, we've all become used to, in this day of recording to digits, not having to think about treble energy levels. Back in the good old days of vinyl, this was the case, even to the point where the loudest tracks with the most energy in the treble department were put at the front of the disc. That's the outside edge, not against the label, where the speed of the stylus tracking across the record is at its greatest, and you stand best chance of getting clean, high-level treble. It's just a fact of life, and if you listen to lots of digitally recorded stuff now, you'll hear big, splashy, wet vocals that in those days just wouldn't have happened and wouldn't have been recordable. Another limitation within the system is in the bass region. Again, this is really all to do with the system mechanics of the cutter head and stylus itself. The issue with bass is all to do with stereo image and phase. It's best that low bass is mono. Out of phase signals, or hard panned low bass, can make the cutter stylus want to travel up and down far enough to actually leave the surface of the record, so you end up with no groove. It's not such a big problem for us, as we automatically mono the bass below a certain frequency anyway, and that'll be the case with most cutting engineers, but still best practice not to have anything too wild in the stereo image or phase department going on at very low bass frequencies. The last really important limitation is just how much recorded time we can squeeze onto a given sized disc. Of course, this is variable depending on whether you're recording onto 7, 10 or 12 inch, and very variable depending on the amount of level you're trying to get on. As a rule of thumb, however, recording onto a 12 inch for club sort of volumes, we ought to be looking towards 8 minutes as a maximum. So now you know. Be careful and steady with the treble, not too much nasty sibilance going on, and be careful with the bass. Keep it mono, and everything will be fine. But one more thing, don't record your digital files at 0 dB. Analog to digital conversion and digital distortion is yet another problem that we'll deal with on another presentation.